Hello people of YouTube. I know it's been a while. I've been on vacation and I also been renovating our house that was in really bad condition. Anyway, I'm back. I'm sitting here and ranting about stuff in my head again, as I always do. So today I got a little bit tired because everywhere I looked and heard, everybody was talking about new gear, new plugins or new hardware and stuff that you need in your studio. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love gear. I have tons of hardware here and I have a couple of plugins that I always use, and it's always fun to try out new stuff. However, if you go to a commercial studio, doesn't matter anywhere in the world, doesn't matter if it's in USA, England, Germany, Sweden, France, you name it, I don't know. If you go to a commercial studio somewhere around the globe, they all have a couple of things in common, and that is the gear. If you have the essential equipment and you know how to use it, then you're set to go for any type of job that you are gonna get yourself into. It doesn't matter if you're doing a vintage style production or some kind of modern production. These are the tools that you need and the tools that you will find in any studio around the globe. So if you go to a proper commercial studio anywhere around the world, you will find a big ass console there. The console will be either some kind of a Neve console, an API console, or an SSL console. Now what's great about these consoles are, of course, they all sound different, but they have great preamps and they have great EQs. Some of them even have great compressors, you know. But I think the main thing with the console is the preamps and the EQ that you have tons of and that you can use on the whole project that you're recording and mixing. One thing that's really common on professional production is that you record through like a Neve or an API to get that flavor, to get that color on your sound. And then when you're mixing on an SSL console, because an SSL console is kind of clean. My console here is a Yamaha PM3500. It's also kind of clean console. It don't sound like an SSL, but it's more in that ballpark as an SSL console. So I try to record. I have some Neve clones and stuff that I use when I record, and then when I mix, I'm mixing on this console. Then you have the outboard gear, and I would say it's like 5 outboard gear compressors that you will find in any studio around the world. So the first compressor that you have is the LA2A, which is an optical compressor. It's kind of slow compressor. It got tubes in it, and it's a real smooth sounding compressor. It's great for vocals, especially. I use it on bass guitar, and also I use it on a lot of acoustic guitar. And then there is the 1176, which is a FET compressor. It can sound kind of clean, but most of the time, it got a lot of character. You can get it to distort a lot, and especially great on drums, percussion. Still good on vocals. Still good on bass guitar and electric guitars and acoustic guitars. To me, the 1176 is the compressor that I can't live without. Actually, I'm using it on anything in my studio. And then we have the DBX160. There's a lot of different variation of that one out there. Me, I'm using a smaller version that's called 163X actually, and it only has one fader on it that goes from less to more compression, and the more compression you put it on, the higher the ratio will go, but it still has that 160 kind of sound. 160 compressor is great on, like, let's say, kick drum, snare drum. One thing that's really good is use the 160 going into an 1176 when you're tracking vocals. Super common to do. I heard somewhere that ABBA used the 160 on the master bus. I don't know if it's true, and I don't remember where I heard it, but I think I read it somewhere. LA2A, 1176, DBX 160. Then there is a Behringer compressor, which is basically a tube compressor. Perhaps not as common for all the studios around the globe, but the biggest studios, they have a Behringer compressor. And Behringer compressor, you think of Fairchild or the predecessor of the 1176, the 175B, or the Altec, I think there's someone called. And tube compressors are great on vocals, acoustic guitar. They're very tube compressors are really smooth. You can hit the tube compressor kind of hard without getting any distortion. So it's great on vocals, on bass guitar, on acoustic guitar, on master buses. And then there is the SSL bus compressor. I mean, there are tons of clones of the SSL compressor, and even if you go to a studio where there is no SSL console, pretty sure that they will have an SSL bus compressor or a clone of that in the studio. They tend to get used on the master bus most of the time, or drum buses or stuff like that. Anyway, doesn't matter if you have the hardware or if you have the plugins. I mean, you can get the plugins really, really cheap. I myself, I have all of these plugins. I got them from Waves. Waves don't pay me anything to say this. So I have the CLA 1176 and LA2A, even the LA3A, which is an LA2A, but it's a solid state. The LA2A has tubes in it. And I have the DBX 160, and I have Waves SSL Mix Bus or Mix Hub or something. Mix Hub, I think it's called. And of course, some other output gear that I have, like I have 4 of them over there, is the Pultec style EQ. Anywhere in the world you go to a studio, you will find output gear that is Pultec EQs. And I mean, the Pultec style EQ that you can still find in any studio around the globe, it was made in the 50s, but we still use that. All of this kind of equipment we still use, and I don't care if you want to record, like, say you want to have a production that sounds like the 60s or the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. So if you're gonna have a production that sounds like the 60s or 70s, use the LA2As and 1176s, use the Neve style channel strips. Or if you want some more modern type of sound, use the LA2A and 1176s, but use the SSL channel strip, use the DBX compressors and the SSL bus compressor and stuff like that. So it depends on how modern you want to sound, but I mean, if you use all this gear that I have mentioned here, that you can find in any studio around the world, you are fine to make productions that sounds like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or a mix of them all. This is the sound of records that we all use around the globe. So if you want to learn the craft, learn all this learn these 5 compressors, learn the Pultec style EQ, learn how to mix them together, to blend them, use them in serial and parallel connections. And when you have learned this, then you can start to build your own type of sounds that you have in your head. But these are the essential things that you will find in any studio around the globe. Anyway, this is just me ranting about stuff again. It's good to be back in the studio, and we're gonna see each other more in the future, I guess. Until next time, please subscribe, hit the like button. Goodbye.